Once upon a time, in a beautiful village, there lived an arrogant prince and a young, beautiful daughter of a healer.
Finally, you will marry me.
I will never love you, never!
They say a kingdom can conquer land, but it cannot conquer the earth that remembers your name. A poor healer's daughter walks into a palace built on fear, not to beg for love, but to trade her future for her father's life. A ruthless prince, raised to rule without mercy, accepts her offer, believing she will break. What neither of them knows is this: the rarest flower in the kingdom is not locked behind palace walls. It is the human heart when it remembers its source. This is not a love story born of choice. It is a covenant forged by desperation, and it will cost a crown. Before we begin, if you love powerful stories rooted in culture, destiny, and unforgettable characters, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this. Like this video, it helps these stories travel farther. And comment below where you re-watching from or what drew you into this story. I read every single one. Now, let me take you to a small village where the scent of herbs and wood smoke hangs in the air, and a daughter is about to make a choice that will change a kingdom forever. The morning had not fully woken, but the compound was already breathing. Mist clung low to the red earth, softening the edges of the mud walls and the Udala tree that stood at the center like an old guardian. Smoke rose lazily from the three-stone hearth, curling into the pale sky and carrying with it the sharp, green scent of crushed leaves and burning firewood. It was the smell of healing. It was the smell of home. Adanna knelt on the ground, her wrapper pulled tight around her waist, her knees darkened by the earth. Between her palms sat a heavy stone mortar, its surface smooth from generations of use. She tipped a small calabash, letting dried Uziza seeds spill into it, round, dark, and stubborn. When the pestle came down, the compound filled with a low, rhythmic sound. Thuck, thuck, thuck. Each strike released a warm, peppery aroma that bit gently at the nose. Not too fast. Oba Adewale's voice came from behind her, thin but firm. Uziza does not like to be bullied. Adanna smiled. You say plants have ears. They do, he replied. They listen better than people. She slowed her pace, letting the pestle roll instead of strike, coaxing the seeds into surrender. Beside her lay fresh agua leaves, still damp with morning dew. She tore them with her fingers, not a knife, her mother's way, and pressed them into the darkening paste. The bitter green smell rose immediately, mixing with the smoke until the air felt thick enough to hold. Oba Adewale lay on a raffia mat beneath the Udala tree, his back propped up with folded cloth. His chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath carefully negotiated. Still, his eyes were alert, following his daughter with quiet pride. You woke before the birds again, he said. Adanna did not look up. They make too much noise. I prefer the silence before they start arguing. He chuckled, then coughed, a deep, rattling sound that ended too sharply. Adanna froze. Baba, she said, turning quickly. I am here, he said, waving her off. Do not let fear spoil good medicine. She returned to the mortar, though her hands trembled slightly. You should not talk so much. And you should not worry so much, he replied. Yet here we both are, stubborn as goats. She laughed despite herself. You raised me. Yes, he said softly. And the earth finished the work. She scooped a bit of the paste with her thumb, testing its warmth. This one will help your chest. Uziza to chase the cold, agua to remind your blood how to move. He nodded approvingly. You speak like a healer now. I learned from watching you, she said. No, he corrected gently. You learned from listening. She carried the mortar to him and knelt by his side. As she rubbed the paste into his chest in slow, circular motions, he closed his eyes, breathing in the scent. Do you remember, he asked, when you were small and tried to cure a chicken with river mud? Adanna groaned. Baba, please. You wrapped it like a baby, he continued, smiling. The chicken survived. The mud pot did not. That chicken still limps, she muttered. But it lives, he said. That is what matters. She pressed her lips together, fighting the familiar tightness in her throat. You talk as if you are already a story. Oba Adewale opened his eyes and studied her face. Every living person is already halfway to becoming one. She paused. Then tell me one now. He shifted slightly, gathering strength. Listen well. She leaned closer. The river that forgets its source, he said slowly, will surely run dry. She repeated it. The river that forgets its source will surely run dry. What is the source? He asked. Our ancestors. Yes. Our land. Yes. Our people, she added. He smiled. And family. Adanna swallowed. I will never forget. He reached out and placed his palm over hers, herb-stained and warm. Promise me. I promise, she said without hesitation. A breeze passed through the compound, rustling the leaves of the Udala tree. Baba Ifeanyi exhaled slowly, his breathing easing just a little. Adanna stayed there, grounded by his touch, by his voice, by the rhythm of the earth beneath them, anchored to the place where her river began. She did not know yet that the drums were already on their way. The news reached Adanna the way dangerous things always did, quietly. It slipped between conversations at the stream, rode on the backs of sighs in the market, hid itself in the spaces where voices dropped low and eyes darted away. By the time it reached her, it already carried the weight of inevitability. They are seeking a wife for the prince, Mama Sola whispered, her fingers busy sorting bitter leaf. Not a bride for love. A bride for balance. Balance? Adanna asked, though her heart had already begun to beat faster. Mama Sola glanced around, then leaned closer. A seer spoke. He said the kingdom's root is shaking, that only a marriage will steady it. Another woman snorted softly, as if women are stakes driven into the ground. And whoever is chosen, Mama Sola continued, lowering her voice further, her family will be paid richly. Gold, cattle, land. Adanna felt the words settle in her chest like stones. That night, she sat beside Baba Ifeanyi as he struggled for breath, counting each rise and fall of his chest. The medicine helped, but it was not enough. She saw it clearly now. Time was thinning. You are thinking loudly, Baba Ifeanyi said between breaths. There is a path, she said carefully. Paths that appear in the dark often lead into thorns, he replied. She did not answer. By dawn, her decision had finished forming. She washed at the stream in silence, letting the cold water sharpen her resolve. Back in the compound, she sat on a low stool and began to plait her hair. Not for beauty, for order, for readiness. She threaded simple copper beads into the ends, metal that bent but did not break. Her mother's indigo-dyed wrapper lay folded beside her. She lifted it reverently, pressing it briefly to her forehead before tying it around her waist. The cloth smelled faintly of clay and smoke. Finally, she dipped her fingers into warm palm oil and anointed her wrists, murmuring softly, "Strength in my hands, steadiness in my heart." She was not preparing for a wedding. She was arming herself. The palace courtyard exploded with color. Osoo gleamed under the sun, reds and golds competing for dominance. Families stood tall, daughters arranged like offerings, baskets of tribute laid carefully at their feet. Drums pulsed, but beneath the rhythm lay tension. This was not celebration. This was selection. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat Prince Kofi beside Oba Adewale. Kofi's posture was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, cold flint, striking sparks of judgment wherever they landed. He leaned forward as each woman approached, his voice loud enough to cut. "Your father's farms are small," he said to one. "Do you plan to feed the kingdom with excuses?" Another bowed too deeply. He laughed. "Stand straight. A woman who bends too easily will snap when needed." Oba Adewale watched, silent, assessing. When Adanna stepped forward, the courtyard seemed to hold its breath. She did not bow. She did not speak. Her gaze fixed instead on the ivory leopard tooth pendant at Kofi's neck, polished, heavy, symbolic. A trophy of power taken, not earned. Kofi noticed. "Well," he sneered, "does the girl from the bush not have a tongue?" Adanna lifted her eyes then, calm and unafraid. The drums faded into memory. "I have a tongue," she said evenly, "but I will not waste it on begging." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Kofi's lips curved, not in amusement, but interest. He leaned back, studying her like a puzzle that dared him to solve it. "And what do you offer, silent girl?" he asked. She met his gaze without flinching. "A bargain." The word landed like thunder. "I will give you what the seer demands," she continued. "A marriage that steadies your throne." "And in return?" Kofi asked softly. She did not hesitate. "You give my father the compensation now. Not as bride price. As medicine." The Oba's eyes narrowed. Kofi laughed, sharp, humorless. "So," he said, rising slowly, "a covenant." He stepped closer, close enough for only her to hear. You will wear my name. You will carry my silence. Adanna's voice did not shake. I have carried heavier things. The drums resumed, louder now. And somewhere deep beneath the palace stone, the earth shifted. Kofi's eye sharpened. Choose your next words carefully. Marry me, Adanna said. The word fell like a struck gong. Gasps erupted. Someone dropped a calabash. A woman whispered, madness. Another hissed, she wants to die. Oba Adewale shifted on the dais, his fingers tightening around his staff. Adanna continued, unshaken. Use my common blood to silence the seer's words. Let them say the prince has chosen. Let the kingdom rest. Kofi stared at her now, openly fascinated. And in return, he asked softly, dangerously. Her voice did not waver. You give my father the compensation now. Not as bride price. As medicine. She stepped closer, just one step. He drowns on dry land. The court exploded. This is an insult. Guards. She bargains with the throne like a trader in the market. Oba Adewale rose slowly, the air around him thickening with authority. His eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade drawn halfway from its sheath. You forget where you stand, the Oba said. You speak as if power is something to be negotiated. Adanna turned toward him and bowed. Once, deeply. Respectful. Final. I know exactly where I stand, she replied. That is why I speak. Silence slammed down again. Kofi laughed. It was not a warm sound. It cracked through the tension, sharp and humorless, like iron striking stone. Do you hear her, father? He said, rising to his feet. She comes with no lineage to boast of, no alliances to offer, only need. He walked slowly around Adanna, circling her like a predator assessing prey. And yet, he continued, she has given me something none of these others dared. He stopped in front of her. Disrespect. Adanna met his gaze. Truth, she corrected quietly. For a long moment, they stared at one another, two rivers colliding. Then Kofi smiled. So be it, he said. A covenant, then, not a marriage. The word covenant echoed, heavy and binding. You will get your medicine, he went on. Your father will breathe because of me. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. And you will wear my title, and the silence that comes with it. Adanna nodded once. I accept. Oba Adewale's jaw tightened. You dare, I dare. Kofi interrupted, turning back to his father. Because it solves your problem. He gestured lazily at the watching court. The seer's prophecy is answered. The people will sleep. And I, his eyes flicked briefly to Adanna, gained something unexpected. The Oba studied them both, his silence a storm gathering strength. At last, he struck his staff against the stone. Let it be done, he said coldly. But remember, Prince, covenants bind both ways. Kofi inclined his head. I have never feared chains. A scribe stepped forward. Witnesses were named. The words were spoken aloud, ancient and irreversible. Somewhere deep beneath the palace floor, the earth groaned. The covenant was sealed. Adanna's rooms overlooked the royal gardens. They were wide and polished, their walls cool to the touch, their floors so smooth her footsteps slid instead of landing. Tall windows opened onto hedges trimmed into perfect obedience, flowers arranged in deliberate patterns, water flowing through carved channels that never overflowed, never strayed. She stood at the window, hands folded before her, and watched gardeners clip leaves that had dared to grow too far. So much care, she murmured, and so little freedom. A palace maid bowed behind her. My lady, are the rooms to your liking? Adanna turned, her face calm. They are generous. The maid smiled, relieved. If you need anything, ring the bell. Yes, Adanna said. I already do. Before the maid could ask what she meant, Adanna crossed the room and lifted a small leather pouch from her traveling bundle. She opened it, checking the contents. Precious herbs carefully wrapped, roots dried just enough, and coins that gleamed softly in the light. She sent for her cousin immediately. When Kayamiko arrived, breathless and wide-eyed, Adanna took both her hands. You must leave at once, Adanna said. Take this to my father. Kayamika's voice trembled. You should be the one. There is no time, Adanna cut in gently. Tell him the medicine must not stop. Tell him I am well. And you? Kayamika asked. Adanna smiled, small and steady. I am where I need to be. She watched from the window as her cousin disappeared through the palace gates. Only then did she allow herself to sit. The days taught her confinement. She learned palace greetings, How low to bow, how long to wait before speaking, when silence was safer than truth. No, my lady, an elder attendant corrected softly one morning. Lower. The Oba's name carries weight. She practiced until her back ached. She ate alone at long tables meant for many, the sound of her spoon echoing faintly against the plate. She walked corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly, her footsteps answering themselves, hollow and lonely. Prince Kofi passed through these spaces like a storm. Sometimes he was loud with his warrior friends, laughter sharp, voices carrying bravado and challenge. Sometimes he sat in council, dismissive, precise, his words cutting short men twice his age. He rarely looked at her. And when he did, it was as if she were furniture, present, intentional, but unimportant. It was behind the kitchens that she found the earth. A small, forgotten patch lay there, sun-scorched and cracked, dusted with ash from cooking fires. Adanna knelt and pressed her palm into it. This one still breathes, she whispered. A shadow fell across her. What are you doing there? She looked up to see Sister Nneka, arms folded, eyes sharp, her presence as solid as a wall. I am asking permission, Adanna said. Sister Nneka raised a brow. For what? To plant, Adanna replied simply. Just here. The older woman laughed once, dry and surprised. You think the palace needs your village leaves? Adanna met her gaze. The palace needs many things it does not know how to ask for. Silence stretched. Finally, Sister Nneka said, if the Oba complains, I will deny knowing you. Adanna smiled. That is enough. She cleared the earth slowly, patiently. She planted nchanwu, peppers, bitter leaf, nothing ornamental, nothing weak. Kitchen staff lingered, pretending to pass by. What is that one for? A young maid asked, pointing. For breath, Adanna answered. And that? For strength. A few days later, a young guard approached, limping slightly. My lady, he said, hesitant. They said you know things. Sit, Adanna said. She examined the infection, mixed honey and turmeric, and applied it gently. He hissed, then relaxed. It already feels better. Come back tomorrow, she said. Word traveled quietly. Respect followed just as quietly. From a balcony above, Kofi watched. She knelt in the dirt, hands dark with soil, surrounded by murmurs and gratitude. He frowned, confused. She was cultivating life, and he had been trained only to end it. The sound cut through the palace night like a cry. Crash. Clay shattered. Silence followed. Thick, stunned, unnatural. Adanna rose from her mat at once. The palace slept, but not peacefully. Moonlight stretched across the corridors as she moved, barefoot, guided by instinct more than sound. The scent of damp stone and night flowers filled the air. Another sharp breath. Angry. Broken. She followed it into a private courtyard, hidden from ceremony and eyes. There, by the light of a single torch, stood Kofi. He was alone. Fragments of a shattered Udu drum littered the ground, its painted surface split into useless curves. A carved stone statue lay toppled nearby, its face cracked, its body broken at the waist. Dust coated Kofi's hands. His chest heaved, not with exertion, but with something deeper. Rage burned down to embers. He was not a prince here. He turned sharply when he sensed her presence, eyes flashing. Come to witness the leopard's tantrum, he said, voice sharp, brittle. Or did the noise offend your precious garden? Adanna did not step back. She looked at the broken drum, then at the fallen statue, then at him. I see a man who fights shadows, she said calmly, because he has never been shown his true shape. The words landed hard. Kofi laughed, short and hollow. You think you see me? He kicked a shard of clay across the stones. You see what the palace allows. He paced, running a hand through his hair. All my life, lessons carved into bone. He stopped abruptly and faced her, eyes dark. My father's first lesson, he spat, was this. A ruler's heart must be like the stone at the bottom of the river, unmoved, cold, useful only for drowning others. The courtyard swallowed the words. Adanna felt them settle into her chest like weight. Slowly, she stepped closer. And did he ever tell you, she asked quietly, what happens to the river when all it knows is stone? Kofi's jaw tightened. Rivers are meant to serve. No, she said gently. They are meant to flow. He turned away, his shoulders stiff. Flowing things get carried away. She watched him then. Not the prince, not the weapon, but the boy beneath the ash. A boy taught to harden where he should have been held. a boy whose anger had nowhere to go. You broke the drum, she said softly. It made noise, he snapped. Useless noise. She crouched and picked up a shard, turning it in her hands. It was made to speak, she said. Now it is silent. His breath caught, just for a moment. You should be afraid of me, he said. Everyone else is. I am not everyone else, Adanna replied. He looked at her then, truly looked, confused, exposed. For the first time, she saw it clearly. Not a cruel prince, but a lonely boy, trained to be a weapon, still waiting, hungry for a father's touch. The torch flickered. Neither of them moved. The afternoon sun lay heavy over the palace kitchens. Steam rose from boiling pots. Laughter drifted from servants on break. And behind it all, tucked just out of ceremonial sight, Adanna's garden breathed quietly. The soil was dark where she had watered it. Her sleeves were rolled up, her fingers stained brown, nails edged with earth. She knelt, thinning seedlings with care. You dirty your hands like a servant. The voice came without warning. Adanna did not look up. It sounds like a statement, she said calmly, but it smells like a question. Kofi stood at the edge of the garden, arms crossed, sunlight catching on his bracelets. He looked out of place there, too sharp, too controlled, like a blade laid on soft ground. You were given rooms overlooking the royal gardens, he said. Yet you choose this. She pinched a weed free and set it aside. Those gardens are told what to be. These ones are asked. He scoffed softly. Soil is soil. Dirt. Adanna finally looked at him. The earth is not dirty, she said. It is clean. She pressed her palm flat against the ground. It gives truth. You put a seed in, it gives you back exactly what you planted. Unlike men. The words lingered. Kofi opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence stretched, broken only by the buzz of insects and the distant clatter of pots. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped closer. Then, to Adanna's surprise, he knelt. Not to her. To the earth. Show me, he said. He pointed to a plant with broad green leaves. That one. Nchanwo, she replied. Basil. It clears the head, strengthens breath. And this? He asked, pointing again. Bitter leaf, she said. It teaches patience. It heals even when it tastes unpleasant. He nodded, absorbing the words, his hands hovering uncertainly over the soil. You learn this where? He asked. By watching, she said, and by listening. He touched the ground at last, fingertips brushing dirt. He frowned, not in disgust, but curiosity. It is warm, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. Because it is alive. For the first time, he did not judge. He listened, and in the space between stone and soil, something fragile took root. The summons came at dawn. Adanna and Kofi found themselves in the Oba's grand hall, the air thick with incense, the polished floors reflecting the light of hundreds of torches. The palace was already humming with preparation for the Adewale festival, a celebration of harvest, ancestors, and allegiance. Servants scurried with trays of gold-threaded fabrics and bowls of spiced palm wine. Drums waited in the courtyard, silent but expectant, like coiled snakes. Oba Adewale's eyes were like dark stone. He did not sit. He did not smile. He simply regarded them with the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders. You will confirm your role, he said to Kofi, voice cold and measured. Adanna is a temporary ward. You will act the part, publicly, at the festival. And afterward, the political marriage with the neighboring chief's daughter will proceed. Nothing else matters. Obedience is the law of blood. Kofi's jaw tightened. The words were not unfamiliar, but they clashed violently with the warmth that had grown in his chest over these months. Yes, father, he said, though each word felt like stepping into a river of fire. Adanna remained silent, listening to the familiar rhythm of the hall. Footsteps on polished stone, whispers of anticipation, the occasional clatter of a tray. She adjusted the borrowed gold around her wrists and neck, the weight unfamiliar but symbolic. She felt more like a sacrifice than a guest. The festival erupted in a frenzy of color and sound. 1,000 drums beat in rolling waves. Dancers spun, their osso oak skirts and beads catching the torch's glow. Smoke from cooking fires and incense mingled with the scent of ripe fruits. The palace was alive, electric with history, wealth, and power. Kofi walked beside her, face composed, every gesture measured. He greeted envoys, nodded to chiefs, answered questions with the sharp politeness of a man who had trained his life to obey. But his eyes kept finding her, scanning her stance, the curve of her neck, the way her shoulders held steady beneath the weight of gold and expectation. Finally, the moment came. Oba Adewale rose. The hall stilled. Drums fell silent. Only the crackle of torches whispering in the background. "My son," the Oba said, voice rising over the gathered crowd. "The covenant stands. The neighboring chief's daughter awaits your alliance. Confirm this publicly now. Let all witness your obedience and the kingdom's stability." Kofi's chest tightened. Every muscle in his body screamed obedience, the very marrow of his bones trained to follow. And yet, in that instant, he remembered the words that had shaped him in the quiet moments with Adanna. The proverb of rivers, the lesson of roots, the pulse of life over the cold command of stone. He turned his eyes to her. Adanna stood like a sapling in a storm, gold catching the light, eyes steady, hands unclenched. For a moment, the noise of the festival fell away. He heard again her father's words, the first lesson she had passed to him. The river that forgets its source will surely run dry. Kofi inhaled deeply. He could feel the weight of his father's gaze, the centuries of expectation, the pressure of the court. But he also felt his own heart, beating fast, alive, loyal to something greater than titles and obedience. He raised a hand, and the drums stilled, every dancer frozen mid-step, every voice hushed. Silence fell heavy, the kind that shakes stone. "Father," Kofi said, voice clear, echoing across the hall. "I have remembered my source. My covenant has become my choice. My alliance is here." He stepped forward. Every eye followed him. He walked straight to Adanna. Slowly, deliberately, he removed the ivory leopard tooth pendant from his neck, the symbol of inherited power, violence, and fear. He placed it on the polished stone floor, letting it lie between them like a discarded crown. Then he held out his hands, open, empty, offering not title, not gold, not obligation, just himself. Adanna's eyes met his, steady, unafraid. She took his hands in hers, feeling the roughness from work in the earth, the strength forged from years of struggle, and something else, trust. The Oba's eyes widened. Rage gathered there like a storm about to break. The hall seemed to quake in anticipation, the silent thunder of a father's fury pressing down. But Kofi did not falter. He did not blink. He did not take back his hands. The crowd waited, tense. The drums waited, still. And in that pause, history bent. A new alliance was born, not of obligation, not of fear, but of choice, courage, and something older than power, humanity. The Oba's voice cut through the marble hall like a whip. "Kofi, you are Ifeanyi worthless. You have cast aside the legacy of your house, disobeyed your father, and mocked the throne itself. All titles, all privileges, are forfeit. You leave this palace with nothing." The words landed like stones. Servants and courtiers whispered. Some bowed, some stiffened, but none dared speak. Kofi's jaw clenched. His hands tightened into fists for a moment, then relaxed. He looked at Adanna, standing beside him, golden in borrowed finery. She did not flinch. She did not waver. The Oba's gaze lingered on them a heartbeat longer, then swept away as if erasing their existence from the palace air. Guards approached, curtly, and motioned them toward the gates. They left without title, without fanfare, without carriage. Only the essentials they could carry by hand. At the palace gates, Kofi paused and drew in a deep, steadying breath. The air outside was warmer, freer, scented with dust and distant trees. He looked at Adanna, and for the first time since the covenant, he could speak without fear of judgment. "I have no royal compound to give you," he said quietly, almost shyly. Adanna smiled. She took his hand, now calloused and worn from labor in her garden, and squeezed it. "Good," she said softly. "Royal soil is poor for growing real things." He blinked at her, surprised by the truth in the words. And then they walked, side by side, toward the road leading home. The village compound came into view as the sun dipped low. Smoke curled from the cooking hearths. Chickens clucked in the courtyard. The scent of yam and herbs drifted through the air. Baba Ifeanyi stood leaning on his stick. His eyes, tired but bright, lit up at the sight of his daughter. "Adanna," he cried, voice cracking. He stepped forward, embracing her with a strength born of relief and love. Adanna laughed through her tears. "Father," he pulled back slightly, catching sight of Kofi, whose royal robes had long been exchanged for simple clothes. He studied him, eyes assessing, wary, and then softened. "You are welcome, Nwa," Baba Ifeanyi said, voice warm. "My child." Kofi bowed slightly, nodding with respect. "Thank you, Baba Ifeanyi." That evening, the compound settled into its familiar rhythm. Kofi, awkward and unsure, picked up the pestle and mortar to help pound yam. His first attempts were clumsy, yams flying unevenly, a loud smack against the mortar. The children erupted into laughter. Slowly, Adanna scolded, though her eyes sparkled. "It is not the palace you are commanding, but the yam." Kofi grinned, cheeks red, and tried again. Each strike brought laughter, learning, and, slowly, competence. After the yam was pounded, Adanna led him to a small corner near the hut, where a fragile green shoot had been carefully protected. "The Udara o Kuku," she said, crouching beside it, grown from a saved seed. Kofi leaned close, examining the delicate leaves. "It survived," he murmured. "It did not like the palace air," Adanna explained. "It needed the smoke of home, the laughter of family, honest soil." He reached down, brushing his fingers along the tiny stem. "Like people," he said quietly. "Exactly," she said, smiling. "Like people." And in that simple moment, amidst the clatter of children and the warm scent of home, a new life began, one rooted not in titles or gold, but in care, labor, and love. Morning light spilled over the compound, warm and soft, illuminating a life built by choice and care. Kofi knelt over a block of mahogany, chisel in hand, sweat beading at his forehead. The wood smelled of earth and rain, its fibers yielding slowly under careful pressure. "Like this," Adanna said, leaning over his shoulder. "Press, don't strike." The wood responds to patience, not force. He paused, nodding, feeling the grain beneath his fingertips. "I am used to orders," he admitted. "Not listening." "Listening brings life," Adanna said gently, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Even wood has stories if you care to hear them." Hours passed in quiet focus, the children of the village peeking from behind the fence, curious. Later, Adanna worked alongside Sister Nneka, who had left the palace to join them. Together, they expanded her small healing hut, building shelves for herbs, arranging clay jars, and labeling each one with care. Who knew a palace head cook could handle wood and mortar alike? Kofi remarked, setting a plank carefully in place. Sister Nneka shot him a sharp glance. "Watch your tone, Dyke," she said, but the smile tugging at her lips betrayed her pride. Meanwhile, village children gathered around Adanna and Kofi. She demonstrated the uses of nchanwu, bitter leaf, and agwu, while he, still learning the delicate balance of authority without fear, explained how local disputes could be resolved fairly, using stories, respect, and listening rather than threats. "Why must the chief always win?" a small boy asked. Kofi knelt to meet his eyes. "Because that is what we are taught," he said softly. "But sometimes, fairness matters more than winning. You can lead with your heart, not just your strength." The boy nodded solemnly, absorbing the lesson as Adanna handed him a tiny bundle of herbs. As dusk fell, the compound glowed with firelight and the soft hum of evening. Inside the hut, Baba Ifeanyi sat by the hearth, staff across his knees. The children circled, eager for the familiar sound of his voice. "Long ago," he began, "there was a river that forgot it came from the mountains." His words rolled through the hut, carrying the weight of generations. The children leaned closer, eyes wide, as the story wove magic into ordinary night. Adanna sat on a low bench beside Kofi. Her head rested lightly on his shoulder. His arm wrapped around her, warm and steady, fingers tracing the intricate pattern of her braids. She sighed softly. "I like this," she murmured. "Our kingdom." Kofi smiled, brushing the tip of her hair behind her ear. "Not of land," he said. "Not of titles or crowns, but of spirit." The camera pulled back slowly, leaving the warmth of the hut, the laughter and quiet chatter of the children, the soft amber glow of firelight. The compound stretched outward, humble but alive. Beyond it, the sky bloomed with stars, endless and infinite. The montage lingered on Kofi chiseling with care, a finished carving of a bird displayed proudly. Adanna and Sister Nneka arranging herbs, jars gleaming in the sunset. Children laughing as they mixed powders, learning by touch, smell, and story. The two of them planting seedlings together, hands covered in earth, sharing quiet smiles. And in the final shot, the firelight flickered across Baba Ifeanyi's gentle face, the children listening intently, Adanna and Kofi holding each other, their fingers intertwined, the stars above a silent witness to a kingdom of love, choice, and life, grown from soil, sweat, and spirit. Voice.